All right, last week we promised you that we shall be looking at the Global Terrorism Index 2015. This was released last year in an effort to measure the impact of terrorism in the world. And of course, we will try and see also what is happening currently with the main group or the main insurgents that are wreaking havoc in the world. So we have the five most deadly terrorist groups in the world that we want to discuss here this morning. And of course, they're related. We have Islamic State, we have Al-Shabaab. And first up is Boko Haram. We will not really belabor this because we talked about Boko Haram, and we've seen that there is a release report by UNICEF on how they're trying to lure young children to actually become militants and suicide bombers. Incidents of Boko Haram, 453, deaths 6,644, injuries 1,742, locations of attack or attacks Cameroon, Chad, and Nigeria. Remember, today also we are observing 2 years since the Chibok girls were captured. And it says Boko Haram was the deadliest terrorist group in 2014, killing 6,644 people. The group is also known as Jamaat al-Las-Sunna, lead the Wawal Jihad, and more recently Islamic State's West Africa province, ISWAP. Is that the case, Dr. Mustafa?
Yes.
The name Boko Haram can be translated as Western education, is forbidden following a dispute with Nigerian. It seems, yes, as Hashi said, that effort also is being made to try and tame Boko Haram. Maybe just briefly you can wind up on that because we discussed about this. Dr. Mustafa.
Yeah, the Jamal Sunna lil Da'awati wal Jihad.
Did I get it right?
You got it right, yes. You know, that group, they don't call themselves Boko Haram.
They don't call themselves
Boko Haram is a derogatory name that is actually used. Well, I mean, it's like Daesh. Boko Haram means it's a Hausa name. Boko means book or Western education. Haram is prohibited, so Western education is prohibited. But the actual name is Al-Sunnah lil-Da'awati wal-Jihad. And that's how it started. Because they really didn't want to have their children educated through the Western education, which they considered as corrupted, and that's why they got that name. Of course, the group will be degraded significantly. It has already been degraded, and that's why they're resorting to these deplorable, desperate tactics to actually strap children with bombs to send them to.
All right, and of course we saw also there's, I don't know what group they call them, there's a breakaway from Boko Haram. Is it Anusura? I cannot remember the exact name. Anisaru, yeah? Yeah, you can tell us more about Anisaru. Was it part of Boko Haram? Did they break away from Boko Haram?
Most of these groups, even Al-Shabaab itself, they're breakaways. They're groups that are now, they call themselves Jabha East Africa. There's the Mu'min group that express support and allegiance to ISIS. It's the same case in the context of Boko Haram. And my suspicion is that it's not just one group. It's more than one. Others who would not agree with the tactics that Boko Haram is using would break away from that. And if you look at the history of Boko Haram, the way it came about, it was just like Mungiki, a social movement to try and reform or address certain issues to do with development. And therefore, those, in fact, the original founders of Boko Haram have actually left Boko Haram long time ago.
All right, fantastic. Let's move on and we talk about ISIL. ISIL, this is Islamic State in Levant. And we have the incident there. If my director may just pick up on this, we shall clarify. Because right now they call themselves Islamic State, but initially it was ISIS, Islamic State in Syria, Islamic State in Levant, and so many people have been, confused when they see ISIL, ISIS, IS. What does it really mean? But of course, following ISIL, this is what we have from Boko Haram. Then we have ISIL coming closely next as the next deadliest insurgent group in the world. Incident, we have 1,071 deaths, This is according to that report. Last year, it stood at 6,073 injuries. It is given there as 5,719. A location of attacks: Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and Turkey. Right. Maybe Professor Midama, we want to comment on this briefly as we're coming also to Apollo's.
I think
first of all, we need to also to couple this with the story that we ran. We can see Assad also is having meeting with Russia, and they're saying that Russia and President Assad, they're working together. They have concerted efforts. They're saying, yeah, we tried and pushed out the Islamic State from Palminar, which is a very pivotal state also in Syria as far as that is concerned. But we also have the Syrian peace talk this week. Right. Just comment on that briefly.
Each of this group use social upheaval, social problem to create a cause. If you look at what we call coercion issues, look at India. India has had the longest terrorism activity, beginning from Pakistani breaking away, then the other part, the Islamic State breaking away from India, and then constant war that has gone on. Afghanistan has had a culture war, the same. Each time when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, the activities of terrorism increased. When the American went there, the same situation. The same situation in Baghdad, and now the same situation in Syria. And what we need to understand is that the terrorism will not be rooted out so long as we don't address those four fundamental issues that I talked about. That is political violence, safety and security, lack of respect for human rights, and socio-economic issues. So long as those stay, there is going to continue. Terrorism will continue to emerge. They will find a different way, whether it is through children, whether it through youth, whether through unemployment, or whatever. So we have to be prepared.
We have to be prepared. Also, if we may move on with the director, just to give you a brief of what ISIL is all about. They say that ISIL, also known as ISIS, this is Islamic State in Levant, also known as Islamic State in Syria, or Daesh, is a terrorist group based in Syria and Iraq. It emerged from Al-Qaeda in Iraq, moving into Syria during the Syrian civil war. In February 2014, Al-Qaeda formally broke ties with ISIL, with the leader of Al-Qaeda stating ISIL disobeyed directions from Al-Qaeda to kill fewer civilians like other fundamentalist jihadi groups ISIL seeks to create. And this is how also the figures have been, deaths from terrorism by ISIL and precursors, but we'll move on and we'll just show you. They're not very, very clear on the screen there. But let's move on and we talk about Taliban. And a very interesting occurrence as well. Taliban just yesterday broke away from ISIS, This was a breaking news and exclusive on CNN as well. And it seems also there's not that coalition. There's so much breakaways from these particular groups as well. If we come to Dr. Apollos, you want to comment on this?
Yeah, you see, these breakaways are because of status theory. You see, even Al-Shabaab has had so many breakaways, just like Boko Haram, ISIS. They break away because we have power relations. We used to think that the terrorist groups have an agenda, but their agenda is actually political. Like from al-Baghdad, the leader of ISIS, down to Boko Haram. These guys are looking for power. They are looking for territory, and that's why they target weak states like Iraq, Syria, northern Nigeria, northern parts of Kenya, Somalia. These are marginalized states where they want to put their expansionist policies. It is, most of the time it has nothing to do with the religion. It is individuals with their hunger for power. Look at the Kurds labels. And those Kurds are also in Syria and in Turkey. They want to get power. So these breakaways are because of power relations.
All right.
And they will continue.
Okay, all right. just my director may pick up on that so that I can give you more details of this as well. It was founded in 1994 by Mohammed Omar. The group was originally constituted by a mixture of mujahideen who fought against the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s and the group of Pashtun tribesmen. The Taliban took control of Afghanistan in 1996 and ruled until 2001 when they were overthrown by the US-led invasion of Afghanistan. They have since regrouped as an insurgency movement to fight the now former Karzai administration and the NATO-led international security forces, now known as the Neo-Taliban. And we have the Fulani militants. This is in Nigeria as well, right? But before we even go to the Fulani militants in Nigeria, we know of the Mujahideen, and we know of the video that was released by Al-Shabaab. And they subscribed to Mujahideen. Mujahideen was really mentioned, you know, quite extensively if you look at that particular video. And we have radical sheikhs. They've put their bites all through that particular video. And we can see the sort of radicalization that is being done because they actually following the teachings of these sheikhs, right? And is it justified to say that, yes, even the government did the right thing in trying to exterminate some of these sheikhs with their teachings? Because this is what we know that also the Al-Shabaab is subscribing to. Let's hear from you, Hashim.
The government of the people, by the people, and for the people does not assassinate its people. It takes them to a court of law and prosecutes them to the fullest extent of the law. This is the difference between a government and a terrorist organization. A terrorist organization does not care about the ethics of war and peace. It destroys human beings, does all kinds of violence in order to advance a political agenda. And that political agenda, Debal, is to take over the state in extra democratic ways, if I can invent the word.
Yes.
I think that the microscopic group of people who manipulate this great faith of Islam to whip up political agenda are on the run. They're being chased by states, they're being chased by militaries, and more importantly, they're being chased by the people who are part of that faith, because Debal, you know that most of the people who die and get injured and who are hurt by these jihadist groups are Muslims. The numbers testify to that. The problem has been that you know, human beings have primordial feelings, and when you start manipulating someone's faith, there is an immediate reaction to that. Muslims are at the forefront of fighting this thing. They don't accept it. In Somalia, it is Muslims who have been dying. In northern Kenya, it is Muslims and Christians who have been dying, and all the way down to the coast. So both faiths have been paying a huge price for these terrorist attacks. The government has absolutely no right to do extrajudicial killing. I'm not saying that it's doing it, but that right does not exist in itself. That people need to be arrested and be put in a court of law. You remember the Al Jazeera had a very stunning documentary about this issue, and I think that plays into the hands of the terrorists. You know, we've had the El Ade video that has been going around about that we talked about today. You know, just an atrocious thing that's hurt a lot of Kenyan citizens. My heart goes out to the Kenya Army. I think that the Ministry of Defense should reply to that video and tell them that the Kenya government does not stoop that low. The Kenya government is not a brutal organization that has been killing soldiers that have been defending this country and trying to bring freedom in Somalia. We know that the brutality of the Al-Shabaab has to be fought, and it has to be fought in a fundamental way.
All right. Dr. Mustafa, I would like you to comment on the Mujahideen, because we are talking, and of course, your brave campaign that you're going about the country, this is about de-radicalization. And fully we can see the young men, when you watch the El Ade video, all of them, they are radicalized. And of course, they're following these teachings. And we've been here also with Sheikh from the United States of America, with also Shaukat from Britain as well, who have the imams online, you know, trying to also counter what the ISIS and the other insurgents are doing over the internet to try and recruit people. So if we have these skewed teachings from the Quran, because basically if we look at all these groups that we are looking here, they subscribe to the Islamic faith, right? And we know they're actually taking some of the verses from Quran out of context, yeah, and using them as a pretext. Could you actually just clarify on that? Mujahideen, as we'll move forward and we see Fulani militants as well, are they Muslims in Nigeria? Yep. They are Muslims. Then we'll go to Al-Shabaab as well, which is Muslims as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Dibal. First of all, on that GTI index, the Global Terrorism Index,
yes,
I think it's erroneous.
Why is it erroneous?
It is because I think it's just the way they define terrorism. ISIS should be the most dangerous. Yes. It's not Boko Haram.
But according, you know what they've done, I think the dangerous, according to the deaths that are
being perpetrated. The deaths that they consider actually, that they label as terrorists, is the targeting, a specific targeting. So ISIS has been killing 10 times more people than Boko Haram. They don't consider all deaths in the battlefield as terrorism. Yeah, but ISIS,
it will be hard to actually,
is a terrorist organization.
I actually thought it's Al-Qaeda or Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, I mean, putting in Fulani there, you know, I mean...
Okay, really, but we need to actually look at these groups, because we cannot underestimate Fulani, we cannot underestimate... these are growing groups as well, and they're getting radicalized, and also they're pledging allegiance to these other groups as well.
That's correct, that's correct. Yes. And that's subset of, I would look at Fulani and, you know, within the subset of the Sahelian groups that are actually fighting.
Yes.
When the way GTI actually defines terrorism, they don't consider state actors as perpetrators of terror. Bashar al-Assad has been terrorizing civilians and has actually killed way more people than Boko Haram, for example, or even ISIS that has done. So I have a problem with the way GTI is actually defining terrorism.
Because I think they've given the incidents.
Yeah, they have, and they've done that professionally. It's just that their definition limits them in the way now they actually are the overall threat. And what they've given is for 2014. I believe when when they'll give for 2015, the picture is going to be very much different. It's even going to be much more different if they're going to look at the totality of the deaths by ISIS and these groups. But coming to back to these groups and radicalization and the messaging they're using to recruit.
Before we go there, can we just maybe, so that we can couple this together as we're winding up, we look at Fulani militants as well as Al-Shabaab, so that, because that question about Mujahideen is largely also with Al-Shabaab. So if directly we just pick up on the Fulani militants, you can see the incidence of Fulani is 154. Deaths is 1,229. Injuries, it's given there. Central African Republic and Nigeria, these are the locations of attacks. And just a brief history about them as well. A longer one, Fulani militants in Nigeria come from a semi-nomadic pastoralist ethnic group and are engaged in conflict with farming communities. It says the Fulani or Fula people live in at least 7 countries in West Africa, and the tribe comprises of over 20 million people. In Nigeria, Fulani communities have faced tension with farmer communities over resources for many years. 70% of Fulanis are nomadic grazers. Group of Fulani militants have used mainly machine guns and attacks on villages to assault and intimidate farmers. And finally, let's see where we are also concerned as a country, because this largely affects us. These are the incidents according to Al-Shabaab. This is now 2014, because the report just came out 2015. And the deaths are given there, 1,021. Injuries 850. Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia is where they perpetrate this violence. And we can have history of that. It says that Al-Shabaab, also known as Harakat Al-Shabaab Mujahideen, is an Al-Qaeda affiliate based in Somalia that is seeking to create an Islamic state in Somalia. The group was in control of cities throughout Somalia, including large areas of the capital, Mogadishu. However, due to military campaign by the African Union, Al-Shabaab no longer has the territorial reach it once had. Let's discuss about radicalization and Mujahideen. We know this is what is happening. We saw the video, and they've said, it's very chilling, where he says now it's not a question of if, but it's a question of when and where that we're going to actually have another attack. So we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. But as a country, of course, as Hashi said, we will not bow, we will not be cowed by that. I think our soldiers, they've done us proud. So can we talk about radicalization that is ongoing with the video? Because largely, my concern was some of the sheikh that we have in this country, and you could actually tell even some of the militants there, they have Kenyan accents. They're actually from here.
The incidences of radicalization most definitely is very high in this country. And when Al-Shabaab did what they did to attack a Kenyan camp in
Yes.
El Ade, it was very clear that they were going to come up with a propaganda video.
Yes.
And the kind of pictures that they've been putting out there. Now, what we could tell from the beginning is the use of text from the Quran.
Yes.
That embedded on those on the video itself to recruit, further to intimidate and to legitimize their actions is something that we have always known what they are going to, the kind of message they are going to put out there. And in the Brave manual here, if you look at page 23, you look at the verses that they often, and all those verses actually, or rather 70% of that are something that they quote in those videos from Surah Tawbah, Surah Ali Imran, and Nisa al-Baqarah, and mostly Anfal from the Quran. Now they take those verses from the Quran out of context. That then they used to legitimize what they did in El Ade. Of course, very wrongly, so it's totally out of context. But young minds don't look at that context in El Ade, those who are reading the Quran and are going through the radicalization process. They just look at the text that Al-Shabaab has provided against the pictures that Al-Shabaab is providing. It provides very powerful tool for recruitment. Now, of course, that needs to be countered with counter narratives.
Right, okay. Right, let's listen from Professor Naomi Dambazo giving you headline thoughts as well. Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. Welcome to you.
Dubar, Aziz was a chief spokesperson of the government. And what we need to know, to understand, is that 70% of our 35 years and under are on the internet in Kenya.
Yes.
And that 50% of Kenyan are on the internet. The war we are fighting today is different with the war that was fought in the Second World War and fought in Vietnam and the rest. The information is going to come out one way or another. And so it is very important for the government to be sophisticated enough to get the truth before the propaganda come in and become the truth.
All right.
For instance, we know that 100 soldiers died from Kenya. Is this a fact? There was a member of parliament who refused to get up when the president went to parliament, and he said he's dealing with the people in his constituency, you know, and there is no answer to it. And so we need to be very sophisticated to get the truth in front of Kenyans, and knowing, anticipating exactly what this propaganda going to be. The fact is that so many of our people died.
All right, thank you. And from that particular video, I think what is really telling, so many people died, 100 soldiers died. That has not been verified as yet. That's because correct. The government has not come to the fore to really verify that. It's propaganda from Al-Shabaab. Yeah. But from also the video, we see there are other captured soldiers, right? And that should be also another cause for worry. And of course, they're saying, you know, what we want and we're demanding from the government to pull out of Somalia, and then we'll release these soldiers. Yeah. So are we also on a horn of dilemma as a country? Because we have captured soldiers who are still there. Some succumbed to the injuries who were captured, and of course, they died. Where or what is the way forward as far as these soldiers are concerned who have been captured by Al-Shabaab?
I think the way forward is to continue with a lot of counter-terrorism intelligence. Because
in terms of negotiations, where they say, yes, we want you to pull out, we have your soldiers, this actually, you know, they're captives of war, so to speak, right? You release or you pull out your troops from Somalia, we release the soldiers.
But that is the ideology of the Islamic State, with due respect to my two guys, Mustafa and Mohammed. I have always known that terrorism is the preserve of Islam.
Yes.
Because even if you look at the global index of the terrorist countries,
yes.
you'll find most of them, the first 30 are Islam states. So what we need to do, like Mustafa is now doing in Kenya, he is targeting the hot spots in this country, and these hot spots are Muslim hot spots, because the issue of terror, like I said, is related to surahs in the Quran and Hadithi. So we need to be very straightforward to address this thing, because it is Muslim related. It is not Christian related.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hashi. As we're winding up,
well, you know, when the colonialists were fighting the Mau Mau up here in the mountain, we used to lift the Bible and call them Mau Mau devils, and say that they're inspired by devilish traditional insurgencies. That was a lie. There is no faith in its text that propagates any kind of violence against another faith. Any textual understanding of it can be seen in contemporary society or in the academia. I think the critical question is to know how to play with our security. And I want to say that that issue of El Ade and the propaganda that the Al-Shabaab are using is absolutely something that needs to be understood. I think the Ministry of Defense and the government spokesman have to understand how to reply to these issues, and silence to them does not help. I think it's important that they think about how they're going to deal with these things. As the professor said, the internet age is with us. You can't stop this information. We ought to understand how to do the business of communications and up our game. And that's very important about.
Thank you very much. And finally, just to show you also what is in the Daily Monitor in Uganda as well, on page 17 of the Daily Monitor, we know that security is being beefed up as Al-Shabaab warns of attack. And it says police have beefed up security in eastern Uganda and at key installations following an alleged warning by the Al-Shabaab to attack Mbale town. The warning by the Somali insurgents was contained in a letter reportedly dropped at Mbale Central Police Station on April the 4th by a boda cyclist who has since been arrested. In response, police have tightened security in Mbale town and also increased vigilance at the porous border points of Swam, Amudat, Malaba, Busia, and Lawakaka. This is according to Mrs. Diana Naduwula, the Elgon police spokesperson. And of course, we shall be keeping an eye on that. And also, you can grab a copy of the News African. This is distributed by the Nation Media Group. And they have a very interesting question: why Africa, or interesting revelation, why Africa isn't winning Al-Shabaab, AMISOM, and the war on terror. All the gritty details as well in the New African, distributed by the Nation Media Group. I want to thank my guest this morning, Ahmed Hashi, who is a former spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Apollos Mashira, also a criminologist from Egerton University. And we had also Professor Noami Damba, who is the Vice Chancellor of KCA University and also a foreign policy and defense expert. And also we do have Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, who is an expert on security and reconciliation. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.